Here it is for you guys. Enjoy.
Welcome to We the Thunder. I'm back. We've got the professor.
It's time to go to school.
And we've also got, of course, we have the Stash with us, as always. And we have a special entrance for him.
Clearly, I'm not John Cooper.
From last show. Yeah,
Just
I'm
spitting
back.
facts. Spitting facts around.
It was a good show. It was a good show with Casey Hudson, who was kind of filling in for me. She did a very good job. You guys, not so much. Can't give you guys too much credit for last week's show. If anyone actually listened to it or watched it, you would have heard some awesome predictions like this.
It's like 45
0 losses in 2023 so far for the Bolts. I'll take it.
A nice take there by Schoolie. Another nice take towards the end of the show by the boys.
I just feel they're on some kind of other level right now.
I feel like they're finally on a run. I feel you, man.
The insights you get on this show. This is a team clearly ready to go for a road trip.
By the fans, for the fans. What else can we talk about? I mean, that's like the subtitle of the show, right?
Well, at least we had someone with a little bit of knowledge on the show this week, and let's play the one clip of her that we have.
They started to clean it up a little bit, but if you go into Winnipeg racking up penalties, it's going to be a nasty game.
Going to Winnipeg, racking up penalties, and it was a nasty game. So she was spot on. And the other thing I liked about KC is this little snip from when you guys were playing the game that I invented.
This is fun.
Did you hear that? Let me just go over that again.
This is fun.
This is fun. This is fun.
She was drunk.
Yeah. I sent her a care package so she could do a Stash style.
All right, let's stop. Let's cut it out. Let's cut it out right now. Because we got a guest. First, I got to let you all know I talked to my guy at Monkey Colt Coffee, and during the show tonight, in fact, until midnight, you can use that code GOALS10 again. Get 10% off your Monkey Colt Coffee. You can see it in stores around the Bay Area, but if you live further away or if you just want to order online, go online, get 10% off. GOALS10 is the code to do that. Now,
of course, Steve just ordered 5 bags, so he's like, "Oh crap!"
Steve, I still actually haven't even had the coffee. I just wear the merch until probably next show. when I just talked to Matt about getting some. Steve was the one who told me that it is legit. Some of the best coffee he's ever had.
Dude, go to Sunshine Liquors. If you're not gonna go ahead and buy it online to support our own show, at least go to Sunshine Liquors, bro. Support George and the Neat Freaks. That's where I got my bag. So
there you have it. All right. You guys ready to talk some hockey? Some real hockey with a real insider?
Someone that brings some kind of expert knowledge to this show of ham and eggers that don't know what the hell they're talking about, right?
That's why we have to bring guests on to do this, because as we heard,
I just feel they're on some kind of other level right now.
I feel like they're finally on a run. I feel you, man.
And
they're on a run, a losing one.
And I have to let Stash know that I did have a special sound clip that I will be using all the time now.
That's a very good point.
Thank you, Stash.
That's a very good point.
All right, enough with that.
Come on, bro. Seriously. All right.
Let's bring on Erik Erlendsson, lightninginsider.com. Erik, do you agree with these guys who think this team's on a tear right now?
Yeah, they are on home ice. Does that count? They are on home ice. They're very good on home ice. On the road, they're average on the road. They're 9-9.
The problem is, how many road games do they have coming up over the next couple months?
A lot, including next week when they go out for 5 to St. Louis and Seattle, Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary. That's going to be a tough trip. But at least this year, that trip is in January, not in March like it was last year. It was brutal in March.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this month is the month they're going to have to survive. Luckily,
that was our 5th back-to-back already too, something like that, or no? More than that, I think. 4th.
Probably right around there. They have, I think they're top 3 in the league for back-to-backs, but They were so good with back-to-backs last year. I always say like it shouldn't matter.
They didn't lose in regulation in back-to-backs last year. They were 10-0-2, right? So
does it really matter that much?
Well, it just shows you every year is different, and especially this year with so many new players, new faces. A lot of newness going on with a team that we're so used to everything being, not status quo, but pretty much it's been the same roster for the most part for the past 4 or 5 years, right? A few changes here and there, but this year a lot of newness, and I think that's why they're 500 on the road, is because they're just kind of getting used to each other, even though we're about halfway through the season.
Yeah, it was their fifth back-to-back.
Yeah, and they've got several more too. So they're one of the teams that has more than a lot of the other teams that are out there. So let's go back, Eric. Go back with us through the last couple of games. We'll start in Chicago last week. Moose was in there. I believe that was expected. He was going to start the first game of those back-to-backs with Chicago and in Minnesota. Lightning looked pretty good in that game. Won 4-1, kind of a slow start. Gave up the first goal. We did see a Patty Maroon goal, which I believe is good luck. I think we're 2-0 when Patty Maroon scores. So from there on out, I put all my money in the Lightning. And they came through and won, beating the team that they should probably beat.
Had to beat. They had to beat that team. Yeah. Sluggish start, slow start. They were actually lucky to get out of that period. The first period, 1-1. Right, like Chicago was all over him, and sometimes you get these situations. Was it Chicago had 1 win in 13 games, 2 wins in 19 games, 21 games, something like that. So you knew that look, Chicago's in the Connor Bedard race. There's no doubt about it. But when they see that lightning bolt come across up on the calendar, in some ways, that's their Stanley Cup, right? Hey, they're the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champion. They've been in 3 straight Stanley Cups. If we don't show up, we might get blasted out of the building. So I think you see this a lot with these teams, and you knew it was going to be somewhat of an emotional push for Tampa Bay to get up to the level they needed to get up to, and they just couldn't find it for the first period. Coming off that game against the Rangers, before they left town, that was as intense of a game as you're going to find in December. And for a team that's used to playing a lot of those style of games, you played Arizona on New Year's Eve, then you got to face Chicago. It was tough to find the emotional level, but I think they finally rallied behind Brandon Hagel a little bit, in his first game back to Chicago and kind of move things around there. So not the best, crispest game that they've played, but they got good goaltending from Brian Elliott, and their power play showed up. Brandon Hagel involved on both the go-ahead goal and the insurance goal, obviously scoring the one on the power play. A game they had to win because you knew, as we're about to discuss, the next 2 games were going to be difficult games, especially the game in Minnesota for whatever reason.
Cursed, period.
Yeah.
Cursed.
You could kind of tell in that Chicago game, Hagel was going to score from the beginning. I don't think he scored till the third, but you could tell he was going to score that game. He was one of the best players on the ice.
Yeah, he was fired up for it. It's for a guy who had never been traded in his career, and I go back to the story that I wrote on him, one in training camp, about where he talked about the difficulties of being traded for the first time and not knowing the city that you're coming to and not knowing anybody on the roster. You figure at some point you get traded, you'll have crossed paths with somebody on the team you're going to. He knew nobody, right? Like he really came in cold. And, in the conversations that I've had with Brandon, you can tell he's kind of a quiet, reserved kind of guy that it kind of takes a little bit to kind of get to know him and have him open up a little bit, especially for us in the media. Like we're viewed differently than, just about anybody else that would have a conversation with him, but then, when I had a chance to talk to him, a month or so into the season, and he opened up about, the tattoos on his arm and, the story behind that with 2 of his uncles having committed suicide a year apart from each other. And you start to understand, why it takes a little bit for him to feel comfortable and to feel welcomed and to, if you're part of his family, and he was trying to get used to a new hockey family, he's settled in and he's gotten really comfortable and he knows who he is now. He knows what's expected of him. He knows, what the coaching staff is looking for him to do, and he's thriving. And I think that's just a comfort level from, him now being here for a little bit and feeling like he's in a spot He feels home. I guess that's the way to put it. And for him feeling home and the tightness he has with his family, especially after the last few years, his game has really started to shine. So you knew going back to Chicago, some of that emotion was going to come out, and not in a bursting kind of way, but you knew that game meant a lot to him, and by addition, it means a lot to his teammates.
A lot of people said they're surprised by his play here, but obviously they saw something in him in Chicago because they had him on the Tays K line, and then he gets he gets on the Kucherov point line. I mean, obviously to coaches and scouts, he is worth those minutes in that top line. So really it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but I know when we traded for him, giving up the Kachuk, giving up the draft, giving up who was the other player we gave up?
Taylor Radish.
People were freaking out, and then when he didn't just come in here and just start scoring goals like crazy last year, people were like, what was JBB doing? And then all of a sudden this year he starts scoring and everybody's like, oh,
he might as well be Yanni Gord now.
But
right.
Look at
Hagel
all along, though, for him to be Palat's replacement. And last year he played on the third line, and
not
this
according
year
to armchair GMs out there. Not according to armchair GMs. So it was supposed to be whatever. People didn't know that there's a long-term plan. Shocking for a GM up against the cap space, trying to replace a guy who knew he was going to be walking out the door. And I mean, he was scoring goals at Chicago. This should be no surprise. When he was on the top line, he was scoring goals, but not as prolifically now, but I'd argue to say that he has two better line mates than he did in Chicago, to be honest with you. And I think his style meshes way more with those two guys that he's playing with now as well, because he's faster than people think he is, because he's a little bit bigger than Point, and even a little bit bigger than Kucherov. He's like the same size as Kuch, but he kind of on his skates and on the ice, he plays a little bit bigger than both of those two guys do. So he's a good complement to them, and he still has all the moves. He still can stick handle. He still has the shot. He still has the ability to get into space and create chances for himself. So, I mean, it should be no surprise to see the kind of talent that other guys that, JBB and even Chicago saw in this guy.
His greatest asset is his quickness. Mm-hmm. It's his ability to recover pucks. And, I've had this conversation several times with Chief. Him being able to retrieve pucks, it's made a huge difference on the number one power play, first and foremost. That first power play was kind of struggling early in the year. As soon as they move Brandon Hagel up to it, all of a sudden now loose pucks aren't getting away from you. You're not having pucks cleared out of the zone. You're getting the retrieval, and a lot of it is because of Brandon Hagel and his ability, to quickly get on top of pucks. And he uses that quickness on the forecheck. And the more often he can win pucks and put them into the stick of Braden Point or Nikita Kucherov, you're going to have better chances to score goals. And he understands exactly what's being asked of him. He's doing it well. And where have most of his goals come from this year? Right around the crease, around the hash marks, right? And he's not a big guy. What is he, 5'10"? 175, 190 pounds. He's not a big guy at all, but he plays a big game. And I think when they did acquire him, you did think, okay, we're probably going to lose Andre Palat. So this is a guy that we feel we can plug into a top line type of role. He might not be Andre Palat. He's certainly not as physical as Andre Palat or big. Andre, Pally was 6'1", 200 pounds. He had a little bit of size to him. But he plays a similar style of game in that he works the corners well. He works the boards well. He recovers pucks well. And that's why he meshes so well with Point and Kucherov, because he understands what is, what makes him valuable to this team. And he goes out and does it. And, they knew he could do it because he was playing with Kane. He was playing with Tays. He could play with top line guys. It just took a little bit for him to get there because he was asked in the postseason to play a different role. And he played it well. How many times in that playoff run with Killorn and Cirelli and Hagel were they just, not only were they the shutdown line, they weren't producing the points, but how many times were they in the offensive zone, just wearing down the other team's top line? So they weren't getting the production offensively, but they were doing everything except that. And when you can make the top team play hard in their defensive zone, you've already won.
Yeah, and that's a good segue because I was going to say there's a lot of similarities between him and Cirelli as well. He's a little bit more offensively capable on that top line, but he's playing that two-way game, and having him and Sorelli on the penalty kill also has been a huge improvement, and why I think that was so solid. I mean, Winnipeg, they've been taking too many penalties. When you take too many penalties, your PK is not going to hold up. But, I think that it's really coming into that road trip. It had been doing really well, and having those two guys out there make a big difference too, because of that puck retrieval and that they play on the boards, forecheck, and in their own zone below the goal line. It's a similar thing. They don't give the puck up.
And I thought he compliments Point a lot on the matching speed. I mean, you see on some of the games, we talked about this before, Cooch just shoots it to them because he knows they're both already down down past the blue line and headed the other way, where Point was definitely the fastest on that ice for several seasons. And now it seems like Hagel can keep up with and they're side by side going down that ice. And it's great that Cooch recognizes that and can really pass it to either one of them, knowing that they're breaking away, going the other way.
Guess should be an all-star.
Yeah.
Hey, now.
So yeah, the Hagel homecoming went well for the Bolts, went well for Hagel. And then on to Minnesota, where we hear right before the game, the Moose is going back to back. Which, isn't a horrible thing, but it's like, what happened to Vasi? And we get news that Vasi is ill. Is there a curse on the Lightning in Minnesota, Eric?
Well, two things I'm going to say about that. First of all, I got it wrong, and I was not in the building, but obviously, a lot of people saw Ed's tweet that Brian Elliott let him out. Everybody was like, wait a second, what? Are you sure that's the case? Because I saw other people that were in the building said, no, it's Vasilevsky. So I checked with somebody in the building that said, no, it's Vasilevsky. So I put out that tweet that said, hey, I know there's a lot of confusion, but from what I've told, it's Vasilevsky. Well, I made Ed look bad. So that's on me. So people can send their, hate towards me on that one. Please leave Ed alone. Ed's a great guy. Ed had it right. I got it wrong. I put him in a bad spot. I made him look bad. That's completely on me. The second part, yeah, they're cursed. Of course they're cursed. The best thing about that game was the North Star colors the Wild were wearing in their jerseys. That was the best part about the game.
Yep.
To some
because, if
well, anybody not from Minnesota, basically, right? Because everyone, I feel like everyone that lived there hates it because it's like not even affiliated. But anyways, go ahead.
It's retro, so it's cool again.
Right.
That's the whole reason we bring these red shots out.
Oh, that's right.
Just like the Lightning's, Storm Surge jerseys. Everybody hated those when they were out in the 90s. Yep. Everybody's like, yeah, those are cool now. So eventually it won't be cool again. So, but there's no doubt that they're cursed. And the first goal, the puck completely rolls off the blade of Joel Eriksson's stick, goes off Nick Perbick's skating in the net. Yeah. Jared Spurgeon sends a shot that's going 10 feet wide, ends up on the back of the net because it hits Stan Steele. There's no other rational explanation other than they're cursed. And if nobody's heard me tell this story yet, it's the curse of Dan Cloutier. And right now people are like, Dan Cloutier? What's the curse of Dan Cloutier? This is the curse of Dan Cloutier. The Wild's expansion year, which was 2000-2001. It's early in the season. It's October. The Lightning only had one win. The Wild had yet to win a game. So the Lightning's first trip into XL Energy Center at that time, the Wild are winning the game 5-4. So then coach Steve Ludzig, thinking ahead, probably overthinking too much, thinks that Dan Cloutier is a little bit of a better skater than Kevin Weeks, who started the game in net. So late in the game, they pull Weeks. They put in Cloutier because they want that, extra half second, whatever it takes for a goalie to get to the bench from the crease. They want Cloutier in. So Cloutier comes in, and then when they get the puck, the extra attacker, boom, off he goes. It's a 6-on-5. Well, Minnesota scores an empty net goal. Marian Gabourik's second goal of the game. So now they're up 6-4. Weeksy goes back in. During the final minute, Freddie Modine scores a goal. So now it's 6-5 with like 15 seconds left. It's a garbage goal. It wasn't going to do anything. But because Dan Cloutier was in net when it was still a 5-4 game, he's the goalie of record. Dan Cloutier logged 24 seconds of ice time. did not face a shot, and he got saddled with the loss.
Got the loss.
So the curse of Dan Cloutier, the Lightning
Man.
are now 2-12-2 all time in XL Energy Center. So the only rational explanation is, yes, they're completely cursed in that building.
Absolutely.
There you have it.
Well, obviously, we need to bring Dan back for a game.
They need to bring him to Minnesota or something.
For 24 seconds.
They should have stuck
24 seconds
Vassy
and a
in
win.
for 24 seconds or something towards the end of that game to see if they could just reverse the curse somehow.
There you go.
Because
I'll have to
as
bring
you
that
were
up to
saying,
John
nothing-
Cooper. He'll probably just look at me funny.
Nothing went right. I saw a lot of people complaining, where's Vassy? Let's get
He
Moose
was
out
obviously
of there.
sick. And to kind of, because I was talking to some people this morning as the team was back in town, like Elliott was on the ice a long time Wednesday morning. So that's not going to be the case, especially in a back-to-back if he was starting.
Right.
So the plan was he wasn't going to play. I'm not sure the time frame other than what John Cooper said afterwards. It was that basically when Elliott showed up to the building, they said, hey, we're not sure if Vazzy's going to be able to go. That's when he found out, because there's no way he's expanding that much energy in a morning skate having played the night before. So obviously it was sometime between probably 3 and, well, what time that game start? Almost 10 o'clock Eastern. So almost 8 o'clock. Actually almost 9 o'clock Central Time. So it's sometime between probably 6 and 9 o'clock is when Brian Elliott found out, hey, we need you tonight, and that's why Vazzy didn't start. And I guess again from talking to Ed this morning, Vazzy was just kind of doing this in warmups.
Yeah, there's a
so there was
video.
no energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, I mean,
the plan was to start Vazzy, and obviously he didn't feel well enough to go.
In spite of that, I don't think that you can really fault Elliott for that loss. I mean, we talked about those first 2 goals.
Nope.
They don't get more fluky than that. And then the other 2 goals, one was a really good screen, and the other one is right, exactly, by our own guy. And then the other one is just a miscommunication on the switch at the top of the zone, because 2 guys that haven't been on the ice that much together are out there, and so you know what I mean. Like the 4 of those goals, I honestly I didn't see the 5th goal. I got distracted with the family at the end of that game. So but it. So I did, but like 4 of those goals you can only put on Elliott, honestly. Like it's not like he played poorly in the back-to-back, and even having been on the ice all day for warm-ups, you know what I mean? So
they played well. They played well in that game, but not well enough, right? It's just
right, and that's what I don't think
they played hard, but not hard enough. They played smart, but not. So it was just enough of an effort where they could have won, as opposed to what we're used to seeing. They put in an effort where they should have won, and I don't think that's a game you can sit there and say they should have won.
And I thought the Wild looked really, really good. I mean, they're a fast team, and they were physical too. Like they came out hitting. And I don't know if the Lightning were really ready for it. I had kind of in the back of my mind, all right, if Vassy's sick, then a couple of these other guys must be.
Absolutely. There's no way just one person's feeling the effects of whatever's, because it's just that time of year. I mean, myself, I was in my bedroom over Christmas because I had COVID, right? I wasn't really sick, but I was laid up because when I went to go to the clinic, they said, yeah, everything's going around, the flu, COVID, everything is going around.
Tyler Johnson missed the Chicago game because he was sick.
Yeah.
He did warm-ups, and then after warm-ups, he was like, I'm too sick to go. So he didn't play in the Chicago game. So I don't know if
he got Vassy sick that day.
Is that the curse of Tyler Johnson now?
Yeah. There we go.
So were they out hot tubbing the night before?
Yeah.
I mean, and Gustafsson made some incredible saves early on in that game as well. He made a couple of A saves.
He did what you asked of him.
Kept the Wild in early after those fluky goals. So yeah, I mean,
all the puck luck.
I don't think you can. Yeah, like as much as people were losing their shit on the internet, I don't think you really can look at that game as being such a terrible loss.
And they had the addition of Ryan Reeves.
Winnipeg, you know, I think that's a different story.
Yeah, so let's go on to Winnipeg, right? You hear Hedman's out. He's having his baby, from which I haven't heard if he had it yet. I don't think Thomas would know.
He did, I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I can tell you that the team hasn't released it, but yeah, they did have the baby today. So he's going to play tomorrow night for sure. And he's guaranteed to score a goal. So if you're making prop bets, it's always the new father goal.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind for later, guys.
And I had known that he didn't fly to Winnipeg because I had a friend that was at the hotel. And when they arrived in Winnipeg, and Stammer and Sergachev said that he didn't come, he flew back home. And so I got a message right away that night saying, is Hetty's wife going into labor? Like, I'm at the hospital. I'm
Right.
not TMZ here.
A real insider, Thomas Schooley.
Sitting outside the hospital. And so I'm like, I don't know. And of course, at this time, it's like 3 a.m. our time. And I'm like, I have no idea. And they're like, well, Stammer and Sergachev just said that Hetty didn't fly to Winnipeg with them. And so that's the only reason that we could think of why he went there. So, and then the next day they set out the release saying he was going home to be with his wife for the baby.
So Hedman out. Cooch, 600th game, scores a goal as he does. Yeah. But the tale of this game was just awful penalties all over the place. Casey called it. You can't put out that many penalties against Winnipeg. You can't put that many penalties against the Panthers. Nobody you can put that many penalties on. It was the two extended 5-on-3s that's
what killed them.
Really kind of the difference in this game. Bad penalties. I think one was a delay of game. The other one was, another kind of avoidable penalties. But when you go 5-on-3 against a team like the Jets, against your old coach, who probably knows a couple things about how the Lightning play, Lightning found themselves on the wrong end of a 4-2 loss. It was 2-2 going into the third period. So they played okay. From the reports that I saw, Cooper was not happy, called out the team. Now, Eric, is that really more about just these ridiculous penalties they took this game?
I think so, because I mean, look, you come off the loss to Minnesota 2 nights before. In a lot of circumstances, leading to that loss, the old adage is you come home with at least as many points as games that you played on a trip, right? So you're sitting at 2 points through 2 games. So you need a positive result, and they did a lot of good things in this game. 5-on-5. Winnipeg had 10 shots on goal, 5-on-5. 10 shots on goal. Now they had 6 power plays in the extended 5-on-3, so that's not good. But it's the timeliness and probably the undisciplined part of it. Because look, the 4-on-4 goal that Winnipeg used they scored to tie the game late in the first period, the final minute of the first period, is a retaliatory penalty where Anthony Cirelli went after, sticking up. And there are aspects where you you need to stick up for your teammate there. But there's times you have to pick and choose that too. You're totally controlling that period. Like, Winnipeg's done nothing in that period. And then you have a complete defensive breakdown, busted coverage on the 4-on-4, and it's a tie game. Like, you totally dominate that period, and you get out of it tied rather than ahead. You should have been ahead by 3 or 4. And yet you're tied. So I think that part of the penalties, and then, like, Nick Paul's not trying to take a high sticking call, right? But you have to be smart. You have to understand you're already killing a penalty. Just be careful with your stick. So that's one thing when that happens. The other one, why is Vlad Nemestikov trying to put the puck off the high boards? Mm-hmm. Like, it's on his backhand. Bank it off the low boards. Why are you trying to flip it off again, especially on your backhand? It's the time, the situation, and doing things smartly. And I don't think that was a smart play by Vlad Nemestikov. And you're asking too much if you have to kill off. The first one was about 1:36, I think, was the first 5-on-3, and this one was 1:54. This was 6 seconds into the man advantage.
Yeah.
And that's, you're asking too much. And if you're going to kill off a lengthy 5-on-3, you need to clear at some point. And they got no clears. They got no clears in any of those 5-on-3s. And when you've got Ehlers and Morrissey and Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois, Blake Wheeler, I mean, those are really good offensive players. You give them much time and space, eventually they're going to burn you if you let them have the puck in too long. So it's rare. And this I wrote about this. It's John Cooper doesn't call his team out. Hardly ever. Mm-hmm. He called his team out. He called it embarrassing. He called it stuff like that can't happen.
Mm.
So
we saw that after the last road trip, though, when he said in Toronto that this tells me we can't spend 3 days in Toronto. And when I talked to Nigel after, he said the plane trip was not friendly coming home. So it's been these last 2 road trips that they both really crapped the bed on, these last 2 road trips, and have had nasty times coming back.
Yeah, well, and look at it too, because that last one was Montreal, a team that you better beat, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't play particularly well in that game.
No,
but they found a way. Just sometimes your talent just wins you games, and I think that's what happened in Montreal. It was the same thing in Chicago, right? And then you lost the games, Toronto and who was the other team on that trip?
Detroit.
Yeah. Again, you played really poorly in Detroit. So and look, it's probably a good thing that game in Buffalo didn't get played, because the way the Sabres were playing, that would have been a 1-3 road trip most likely. So, and then you turn that around and come back on the road again. Again, you don't play particularly well against a Chicago team, and then you go into Minnesota and Winnipeg, 2 teams that are in the playoffs, and you don't play well. Or at least in Winnipeg, you play well, but you don't play smart. So, yeah, look, I think there's a recognition that this is not the team from the past couple of years. There's a lot of changes. There's a standard that has been set that has to be met. And it's and for whatever reason on the road, it hasn't been met this year. And that's where they've got to get better. And I think that's why, John Cooper is a little bit more emotional, at least showing to us in the public eye, than he has been in years past, because he typically does not call his team out after games. He still won't call out players. He doesn't do that. It's just not his personality. But you rarely see him call his team out the way he did after the Winnipeg game.
Well, so my thing here is like, I wonder, so from a fan's perspective, when a coach is like winning, we've seen it here, Cooper gets no recognition, right? No Jack Adams, no, it's such a super talented team, this and that. I'm just wondering, like recently, if some of this talk about the Jack Adams isn't like kind of maybe getting to him a little bit, because I don't know that you do your team a lot of favors when you tinker with your lines and you're going out on road trips and you're still trying to like, oh, what's the lineup tonight? What's the lineup tomorrow night? And it doesn't help when you're in Winnipeg and guys aren't getting their regular shifts. You know what I mean? And you have to shorten the bench a little bit. Most of Cirelli's time was probably on the PK, not on his regular line. So or in the box, or in the box. So, but that was just one thing I've been like kicking around in my head lately, is like I feel like he's always known to tinker, but I feel like he's been switching a little bit more often than normal. And I wonder, like, sometimes I feel like you just got to let your guys figure it out themselves, instead of being the one to be like, hey, and is that him being like, hey, this is the only power I kind of have, is to switch up the lines because it's talent and I've got to do that? Or I mean, I don't know, because consistency on lines is something, maybe I'm just too old school about that. You know what I mean? Like, these are your lines, you roll your lines. The more they play, the more consistent they know each other. It's like the back of the hand, and they may go through slumps. Maybe you move a guy up or down, but for the most part, these are your lines. And I don't feel like Coop has been really willing to do that since Cirelli came back.
Well, that's the key right there. First of all, that is an old school thought that the lines play. Most coaches nowadays look at pairs of forwards. Okay, who are Point and Kucherov going to play with? That kind of stuff. And even back to John Tortorella days, he knew that Brad Richards and Freddie Modin were going to play together. Who was going to play on the right side, right? Like that's kind of how the thought process was working there. I don't think this is a power thing from the coach here. I don't think this is him trying to send message to teams or to his own team. I think it's a byproduct of what we talked about at the opening of the show about the newness and still trying to find who fits well with who. And it's really been that way since Cirelli came back, because if you look at when Cirelli was out, the top 6 were really good, right? Point, Hagel, Kucherov were really good. Paul with Stamkos and Killorn had some really good chemistry, and they were the best, really almost the best defensive line, right? They'd only given up 5 goals at even strength for a long stretch of time that they were together. And then Cirelli came back, and we all wondered, okay, what's it going to look like when Cirelli comes back? Because he's a guy who's used to playing 18, 19, 20, 21 minutes a game. He's not going to get that playing in the third line role. So how is that going to look? I would have liked to have seen Stamkos, Killorn, and Paul stay together because I think they were really good. And I thought Cirelli really brought you depth that you hadn't had.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're getting almost no production out of your bottom six.
No.
And that can't continue.
No.
So I think that's what's going on here. He knows he has to find some production because, look, Corey Perry has not looked like Corey Perry that we saw last year. Pierre-Edouard Bellemare has not looked like the Pierre-Edouard Bellemare we knew last year. You know, Pat Maroon, I think, has shown glimpses of it, especially since he's been out there with Paul and Colton of late.
Yeah.
But you need more out of your bottom six. You can't continually count on Point, Kucherov, Stamkos, and Hagel to be your only guys scoring. You need more production. And look, since Nick Paul's played in that third line role, his production's dropped. So you just need it. You just need more out of your bottom six. So I think that's what the tinkering with the lines is all about. And it's the same thing with the defensive situation. You know, we've seen so many different defensive combos because they can't figure out how things are going to work. I mean, Sergachev and Perbix were a really good pair, but they couldn't find anybody consistently play well with Victor Hedman. Eric Chernak wasn't getting it done. Zach Bogosian wasn't getting it done. Okay, now what are you going to do? Okay, let's try Perbix with Hedman. Hey, that's working. Oh, geez, now what do we do? Who are we going to play with Mikhail Sergachev? So there's a lot of tinkering and unquestioned or unanswered questions on the defensive side of things for the defense on who plays with whom. And that's, again, for a team like Tampa Bay, where they are at as a franchise, as a team, this is going to sound kind of callous, but the regular season's a dress rehearsal, right? They're going to make the playoffs. That's unless something catastrophic happens.
They're going to be in like 108 points right now, basically, and that's
so it's a question: who's going to have home ice, Toronto or Tampa Bay? That's kind of where we're at with this team.
Exactly.
So the dress rehearsal is okay. What are we going to do with our defensive pairing? Who's going to fit with whom? And you know, and then the X factor is always the trade deadline. What is Julian going to do at a trade deadline? So to me, it's all about experimentation, or not. It's like that's kind of a bad way to put it, but it's all about trying to fit whom with whom, so that okay, this worked in December. Okay, it's March. So let me try and go back to it. Right. So as we get close to the playoffs and they start to settle on those things, you know, and this year of all years, especially because there's so much newness to the team, especially on the back end.
Yeah, and I guess go ahead.
I was going to say that's a good segue into some questions that we have for Eric. I warned you, a lot of trade questions.
Yes, of course.
Got some from Mike Sneed, who I met at a Lightning game last week or the week before. So it's good to meet him. And Serena had a good question, all trade related. But before I jump into that, let people know, how do you get to lightninginsider.com and get that coverage? I know you're looking for some more subscribers, right? Aren't we all? So
here's the website right here. And in fact, I'm going to do this as we talk through it. I'm going to put up a special coupon code for anybody that's listening that's not already a subscriber. I'm going to use Thunder. Okay. So that'll be the coupon code. I'll do that as we're talking through this, but I'll give you $10 off the first year of a yearly subscription. Yeah, because like when the outlet not to be named left town, you'd have thought that maybe that would have added some growth to, you know, my site, or it hasn't, and that kind of surprised me a little bit. So yeah, Thunder will be the code. So lightninginsider.com is the website. If you're not signed up yet, go to as soon as you check out and put your payment information, use that code in the coupon code, and that'll be $10 off a yearly subscription.
Can I say nobody in this market has covered the Lightning longer than Eric has?
It's almost half my life. Can you believe that? That's what we're getting to, which probably reveals just more about my age than anything else.
Yeah, I've been a Lightning fan. I mean, I've lived here half my life now, so that's pretty intense. So.
And I just realized my subscription ran out and I never renewed it. Apparently, I didn't have it on auto.
So you
got on auto renew. What kind of fan are you, bro?
You will be getting
Boot him.
You will be getting
a new use the code, Eric.
Tonight.
Make him.
He was just waiting to get a code. You don't get to use Thunder. You got to pay full price.
Yeah, go support
pay
Eric.
Full price to ride this ride.
He's gonna answer some free questions for you right now. How about that?
We have said this several times, and just a couple shout outs to Eric. After we went off air in the very last game last year on the Avalanche, we just lose the Stanley Cup. We're doing our live show. I'm at Emily doing it. Eric comes up right as I'm packing up my laptop, and he says to me, Paul's searching for a new house. And he's like, why would he be a new house if he didn't plan on staying? So instantly I tell the guys, because I was still live with the guys, just we weren't live on air. And so tell the guys what you said. And then the next 2 days later, locker clean out, I go down and I'm talking to Paul as he's leaving. And I say, I hear you're searching for a house. And his eyes were like, and he's like, why would I do that if I don't have a contract? And then come this past summer, he of course signs, and then that was
like 2 days later. That was like 2 days after you talked to him, right? Like it didn't take long.
I see him the first game of the season this year, and he stops and I said, so I told you were looking for a place, and he's like, you're right. And that was from Erik, and we have made no bones about that came from Erik. That was purely from Erik. It was no Thomas knowledge. I wasn't stalking his real estate
time. Not that time.
Perfect's a whole different story, though.
Perfect. I can tell you where he lives.
He's also the one that broke the story on Stamkos selling his property and flipping. Yeah, that's all Thomas's inside information.
Definitely look into Erik, the Lightning Insider. You guys you hear him on the radio. If you listen to the broadcast, he's very knowledgeable about the Tampa Bay Lightning, and 90% of the questions asked of John Cooper or any of the players are Erik at any of the press conference.
And you can go bug him before the game while he's broadcasting at Cigar City too.
That's right. 1 hour before every game, except for this Thursday. I won't be there this Thursday, but every other game we're out there 1 hour before.
Oh, we've heard.
Yeah. So, that's the pregame skate show. So if there's been a lot of confusion about, hearing 102.5 the strike. That's not 102.5 the bone, right? So that's the strike, which is an HD channel. So if you have an HD capable radio, it's 102.5 HD2. So that's where you can find all Lightning programming. Right?
Can you explain the complexities of HD radio versus a standard?
You mean that 15-year-old technology?
No, I can't. I just know how to promote it.
I hear the broadcast, and I hear when they do. Let's pause for a stadium. For a stadium.
For a network
station
identification. And I hear 102.5 the bone, and then I hear. And then the strike, and I'm like, what the fuck is the strike? I've been in Tampa all my life. Like, it's the one station I don't think I've ever heard of.
Well,
I don't know if your car is capable of HD radio capabilities, but I know that Shooter's truck has HD radio, and all you gotta do is all you gotta do is take one extra click on your little dial there. I know there's a lot of dials on a RAM thing, and you might not even have a dial anymore on your brand new fancy RAM, but it's just one more click to the right, and it's like 102.5.2 instead of 1.
I just think about Erik Erlendsson in the pregame show just comes on.
Magic.
No, actually, what I do like about satellite radio is they have a lightning station, and you can dial in that lightning station. It even shows the little lightning bolt on your screen. So,
so I can tell you, like this HD channel, like I don't think 102.5 has utilized it before, but they've had it. They've had that capability. So with this new radio deal that the Lightning put together with Cox Media and 102.5, said, hey, we have this station. You guys are, you can use that too. I don't know where it's going. I know some thoughts are in the works to utilize that more. They're not there yet, but more and more that's going to be there. But you can also get it streaming on TuneIn. That's the other thing. It's awesome. The strike, and if you just go to TuneIn, whether it's on the app or whether it's on your desktop, just search Lightning Radio 24/7. So what used to be Lightning Power Play on the iHeart network is now Lightning Radio 24/7 on TuneIn. So 1 hour before every game, that's where you can find us there. Is on.
That's why they've been promoting TuneIn, because all I do is listen to the Bone all day long. So
that's the big plug right there.
They've been doing the TuneIn, and I couldn't figure out why they kept advertising that.
There you go. You just reminded me, you're going to have some competition next Monday, because we will be doing a We the Thunder post-game show to get this little show in before a big football.
Big.
We said football game tonight, but the Bucs play next Monday night, so we're going early, right after the Seattle Kraken game. It's a 4:00 local.
Actually, Eric won't be on there, so he don't care. He's going to be on vacation.
I'll be flying back. I'll be flying back on Monday. I'll be flying right over Raymond James Stadium, probably right around halftime.
You'll get a nice view of the game.
Yeah. My son just reminded me, too, you can find Lightning Radio in the Lightning app. So if you have the Lightning app and hit tune into Lightning Radio, you can find it there, too.
There you go.
Everywhere. All right.
See, that's my manager. You start paying him. You start paying him. Pay your staff, man. Pay your staff.
Well, I don't have to pay him. The Lightning pay him.
Oh, there you go.
he works for them right now. So.
Oh, nice.
Nice. That's right.
All right. I don't know whose question.
One other plug, real quick. The last call. So everybody knows the last call with JP after home games. I do it with Chief after road games, and that is on the bone. No, it's not. I wish it was Carson. I wish I got paid like Carson Daly. But every road game, except for the West Coast games, we are on the air as soon as the post game report goes off. That does air on 102.5 The Bone here locally. And if anybody's not familiar with that channel, you can pick it up just about anywhere. You can pick it up in Fort Myers. It's such a strong signal.
Yeah, it's pretty much the strongest radio signal in the Bay Area.
Where do you and Chief do it? Like, do you do it there at the arena or?
Yeah, there's a little studio down inside Amalie Arena. So if anybody was listening on Friday's game, Jurassic Park Live was in there, so we were a little worried about the Velociraptors getting loose.
That's awesome.
T-Rex coming.
Raptors in the background. All right. Let's enough of the shameless self-promotion that we love around here. Let's get to the fans that we're supposedly doing this show for. Chomping in the bit still.
We got a dinosaur-sized player here who everyone seems to think is on the block.
The dinosaur Stephanie, in the room.
I'm right. And Stephanie here asked, do we trade Cal Foote or any other defenseman at the deadline? Do you think if JBB makes a move, and here's another question from I'm right, pretty much the same thing, actually saying, hey, do we get a right-handed defenseman back? Do you think the Lightning are going to move one of their defensemen? They kind of have
this was fueled on by the signing of Perbix.
Well, Perbix is past Cal Foote on the depth chart, right? Mm-hmm. Like he's the guy playing, and Cal Foote's not. So it's not too hard to kind of read between those two lines. You just get the sense that that Cal Foote feels like he's on the way out, and that's just kind of how it feels because he's been with the organization now. Was he 2017 draft, right? So he's been with the organization 6 years. And he hasn't progressed as you had hoped. So I don't think it even has to be at the trade deadline because first and foremost, Rudy Balcers is close to returning, right? Like John Cooper said today that within the next week, he could be ready to play. Once he's ready to be activated off IR, there's a roster move that has to come.
750. Yeah, I mean, that basically clears it too. I'm sitting here looking right now at Cap Friendly. You're looking at Cal Foote's 850. Rudy's 750, and the good thing about Cal Foote is he's still an RFA, so whoever you're trading him to still has control next year, and he's still only 24. So
there's still there's a lot to like about Cal Foote.
Yeah, you're probably only going to get assets though, right? You don't think you're going to get a player, especially because of what we talked about the salary relief. You're not trying to bring in
you would have to go for
money out, assets
draft
in,
pick.
Right? Draft picks.
They traded a lot of draft picks away. Obviously, you're not going to get a first round draft pick. You're not going to recoup either of those two that you sent to Chicago.
No,
but the thing I worry about is like it's not really a secret that they've made inquiries about moving him at some point, right? Mm-hmm. And they haven't been able to move him yet. Now, some of that is because of the time of the season, but you've got a 6'4" right-handed shot defenseman who can play physical. And you still haven't been able to move him yet, what kind of value does he have? But at some point, they're going to have to make a decision because, Balcers, when he does come back, there's only one player currently on this roster that does not require waivers to be sent to Syracuse, and that's Nick Perbix. And you're not sending Nick Perbix down. No. So whether it's the waiver wire or a trade route, you have to make some sort of a roster move to make to be able to activate Balcers. Now, the big question around all of this is not just Cal Foote, but what does Julian do at the trade deadline? We haven't had our midway part of the season to discuss with Julian about some of these things, but I can guarantee you what he's going to say when we ask him about it. I'd want to temper people's expectations. We don't have a lot of cap space. We don't have a ton of flexibility. And he's going to bring in Patrick Kane.
But as always, if there's going to be a move, if there's a move that we can make, then, we'll be looking for it.
We're always looking to make our
They're
team
always
better.
looking to make a move if there's anything there.
Yeah. So that's exactly what he's going to tell us. So there are certainly restrictions on what they could be able to do. And I don't know how many Brandon Hagels and Nick Pauls there are out there. But we didn't know about Nick Paul last year. Right? Like we had no idea. We thought Matthew Joseph was going to be somebody on this team kind of moving forward. And, that it kind of went that way. So I don't doubt that's, they're going to try something. The two areas are, as we discussed, trying to find some more production out of your bottom six forwards, and whether that even includes a guy who can win some faceoffs consistently, which, they're too wildly inconsistent in the faceoff circle. One game they'll be at 65%, the next game they're at 35.
40. Yeah.
So you've got to find somebody who maybe could win some consistent faceoffs for you. Not that that's a priority, but it's something you kind of have to keep an eye out. But you do need production out of your bottom six, bottom two lines. And then the other thing is you can never have enough defensive depth because, especially on the left side with this team where it was such a strength with Hedman, McDonough, Sergachev on the left side, it's not the same right now. You have Hedman and you have Sergachev. You don't feel strongly about the depth after that, right? Whether it's Hayden Fleury or anybody else who plays on the left side, you don't have depth down in Syracuse. Even on the right side, you don't
penalties,
have
and we haven't even brought up the fact that Ian Cole has just been bitten by the penalty bug, right? Like, I feel like he's not playing terrible. I think he's playing serviceable defense as he needs to, as what he was brought in for. But his penalty minutes are just, and timing, right? When he takes the penalties, it's just as important as how many penalties he takes. And it just seems like every time this team gets in a rhythm, he's the one that's taken that bad penalty, a hooking or something. And it's always within a certain distance of the net, which usually tends to say maybe he got beat on the play, or not necessarily just him, but the defense got beat on the play, right?
Well, like obviously his 3 against Chicago stand out. Like everybody was all over him. I'm tired of Ian Cole. Going into that game, he'd taken as many minors as Mikhail Sergachev had.
Don't get me started on Sergachev. Don't get me started on Sergachev then.
But defensemen are going to take penalties. It's just, especially the way the game is nowadays, the hookings and everything else, you can't put yourself into a position to, slow down a guy, without taking a penalty. So you get the stick up, you get the arm free, whatever it is, odds are you're going to get called for it because that's what the referees are looking for. And not that power play attempts are up, but power play success rates are up. I mean, the average power play right now is 23%.
That's crazy.
That's like better than what led the league like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So, power plays are getting smarter and, look, players are faster. How often we've talked about how much faster the game is. And a lot of that is individuals are faster. You've got guys like Trevor Zegras who can just do, just weave their way through magic. And sometimes the only way to slow them down is to take a penalty. So, defensemen are just going to take penalties. It's just the way it is. You have to try and limit them. And actually, something I wrote about last night, I posted late last night, like the Lightning are actually, like they're not the undisciplined team this year that they're kind of being portrayed as, because we think about the Winnipeg game, stupid penalties, undisciplined penalties, but as a whole, they're middle of the pack, right? Their amount of time on the penalty kill, I think, is 15th. The number of minors they have taken is like 14th, right? So they're a middle of the pack team when it comes to taking penalties. It's just that they've taken some majors that kind of boost that number up a little bit.
They were top of the league last season. Like
last year they were second.
Yeah,
they were second behind Nashville.
Towards the top of the league. So like that's a good sign, even with all this turnover. And it seems optically, as we are now looking at it under a microscope, probably even more than we ever have, right? After back-to-back cups, then the finals appearance again, which I'm pretty sure all Lightning fandom agrees after this season that if Braden Point had not been injured, we would have won 3 in a row.
I like their chances.
I definitely like their chances against Colorado with Braden Point in the lineup. we're probably looking at them with a little bit more of a microscope than we ever have before, too, right? As a fan base, like, sure,
I would agree with that.
Sucks because we hear about the whining and the complaining, and it's hard. It's hard when you get so used to winning, and not enough people do realize that this team is in this mode, especially after 2019. That what matters is the playoffs. Get there and then do your work. And we've seen it be successful the last 3 seasons in a row, right? They're undefeated in the East. No one can beat them in the Eastern Conference still.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, they're still the champs of the East. So we've seen that what this mentality has produced. So
it's expectations.
Yeah, right. The sky's not falling. It's not the end of the world. Like we talked about, they're still on pace for 108 points or so. They're still going to make the playoffs. And teams like Detroit have fallen off when they were right there in it. If you really look at the standings right now, you can see it's clear. The Lightning, absolutely, as Mike Douglas says in the chat, just get to April. That's what it's all about.
That's what this team is about.
And we've seen Cooper tinker in the past, and I think he's had to. As you brought up something that I probably haven't thought about enough. It's how new this team really is, because I take for granted the core that we do still have, but there is probably a little more tinkering coming from Cooper than in past years, because there are still some questions out there, and he is still wanting to know situationally who he can rely on and what matchups and what, like you said, in the new way of coaching, what 2 guys can he put on each line and know, all right, what's the third guy am I going to switch in and out?
And I think they missed some of Ryan McDonough off the ice too here, right? Like he's, you look up the word professional hockey player in
just a little bit
in the dictionary. There's a good chance you're going to see McDonough's name next to it, right? He's just such a professional in the way he carries himself, the way he treats his teammates, the time to speak up. So, that's a big void, not just on the ice, but also in the locker room for him. And, it's it was a little unexpected, I think, that he was moved, right? But then you saw what the moves after, right? With the extensions of Cirelli, Chernak, and Sergachev, trading one guy to extend 3, you kind of see the math of how it works and the rationalizing of how you're going to have to do it. But that's a huge hole to fill in a lot of areas with him out, and I think you're seeing some of that effects right now.
Well, and I wonder, just going back to the beginning of the season, you bring in a guy like Ian Cole, who's supposed to have that veteran presence and that kind of ability to come into the locker room, and he had that controversy that I think kind of distanced him from this team, from getting into the role he really wanted to get into, maybe even in the locker room and a presence. Hey, I could come in and be a veteran, and now, so maybe, I don't know if maybe that's part of, I know you're never going to replace McDonough, but that's kind of why you bring him Ian Cole in, right, for another veteran voice somewhat. And I wonder if that's also kind of affected that, of him not being able to really get it, I'm sure by now, but he probably didn't start the season, obviously, the way he wanted to, right?
No, for sure. But like as soon as him and Chernak have been paired together, they've been really good. They've been really good. And that's where experimentation or, trying to find out who fits with Hill. So that's why there's so many moving parts on the back end that once you find something works, well, now you've just robbed Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of where they're at. So they really just have to find the right mix. And the biggest question mark, at least that I had going into the season, was who was going to play with Victor Hedman. We still don't have the answer.
No, we don't.
And you forget how reliable Jan Ruda was.
Not me.
Next to Victor Hedman. He knew how to play. It's not easy to do, and they haven't figured it out. Chernak couldn't do it. Perbix can do it, but then who plays with Sergachev? Can Bogo do it? We haven't seen, I don't think, enough of Bogosian with Hedman yet to figure out if that's going to be a long-term situation here. But look, that's one thing they're going to have to figure out for sure. Who is going to be the consistent partner with Victor Hedman? And we're, Saturday is going to be the 41 game mark. We still don't have that answer.
And his game has suffered for it too, for sure. Like, I think Hedman's game has absolutely suffered for the fact of him not having that regular partner on the other side, and him kind of having to be more of a, I think his role has to be slightly different this year, right? On that defensive group. I know they don't have like a room like in the NHL, like they've got a room just where the defensive guys go. But when they get together and talk about it, he has to have a little bit different of a role now, that it's not necessarily 2-2-2 and then who's that seventh guy like it has been the last few years.
Yeah, there's a lot of adjusting going on many areas, and I think that's, we forget that, right? Because as you mentioned, we're a little spoiled by the core, and but this is what I really like about this team and the management group in particular, especially since Julian took over, and not trying to compare him to Steve, but Julian's a little bit more bolder. Yeah, he's more bold in what he's going to do. And now let's look at the team that you have in place. Okay. Stamkos, Hedman, Killorn are all 31, 32 years old right now, right? So there's your high-end core. Kucherov, Vasilevsky, 28, 29 years old. So they're still in their 20s. And then behind them, you have Braden Point and Anthony Cirelli and Mikhail Sergachev, 24, 25 years old, right? So this is not an aging team, because they start the season off 1-3. Everybody's, this team is old. They can't do it anymore. It's time for them to start phasing out. No.
Paul's 27, Hagel's 24, Colton's 26.
You've got a lot of younger players anyway on this league. This is not Chicago. This is not Pittsburgh that all got old at the same time.
Oh, and by the way, Stamkos and Hedman still playing some of the best hockey of their careers at 32.
Stamkos just had his first 100-point season last year.
Yeah,
I mean, he's still playing at a high level.
If Coop would stop tinkering, he might have 500 goals by now as well. I don't know.
If it wasn't for Connor Hollowbuck, he'd have had it the other night.
Well,
that's a different story.
They're just waiting until they come home this week.
It's a team of a different color. Finally, we talked about before.
Let's hope he gets it tomorrow night, because I won't be there for the next 4 games. So
I think it's happening.
He has to get it tomorrow.
Yeah, that's got to.
Right. All right. Well, let's move on to some fun and games.
The short show that you promised.
Yes.
Hey, I'm all good, man. I got nothing but time for you guys.
We can speculate all night about potential JBB trades, and I think the thing is, we've seen him from the past. If there's a move to be made, he's going to make it.
He's going to make it.
Yeah,
he will make it. There's no doubt. Yeah.
And we'll question it. Why did you give up this for this guy? And then a year later, you're like, oh, that's why.
I'm done. Yes. I'm done questioning him. I'm like, as in as I was on the Iser plan, I'm totally the caboose on the JBB train. Like, and I take that for what it is. I don't care. I say weird stuff a lot, but I mean, I'm right there. I'm on it. I'm on the bandwagon. Anything JBB does, I know he's thinking 6 moves ahead, like a master chess player. He's not thinking about now. He's thinking about now and the next 4 years down the road.
Yeah, well, he said it many times. He owes it to this core to keep this window and keep this team as competitive for as long as possible.
And he's done a good job. So
Patrick Kane coming to Tampa.
You heard it here first. Lightning Insider.
Erik Erlendsson. Spilling the beans. All right. We got 2 games. One is a game that we do every single week, and we let the Thunder play, and that's usually someone from the chat. So whoever in the chat was really hoping they would play today, so sorry. Erik is going to take your spot, and then we've also got a game just for you. All right, so first we have to recap. Somehow these guys pulled it off when I wasn't here and did the game without me, and Casey played for me. Didn't really help me much.
Good.
But let's go through it. So 2 of the categories, there were no points awarded. That was record for the week. Nobody predicted 1 and 2. And when Stamkos will score 500, that quest is still going on. So we'll go on to most points for a D-man. And that was won by the Thunder. Hedman had 2 points last week. They were both in that Chicago game. He led all defensemen. So that's a point for the Thunder. And then shots on goal. Hagel and Stamkos both rang in with 9 shots over those 3 games. Hagel, super consistent. Mr. Consistency here with 3, 3, and 3. And Hedman had 5, 3, and 1. So those 5 were all in the Winnipeg game. He was playing pretty good, but could not get one in. So that means Stash gets a point for Hagel, and the Thunder gets a 2nd point for Stamkos. That puts our current standings with Stash in the lead with 12. The Thunder moving up right behind him with 11. Schoolie with 10, and myself with 9. No thanks to
like toilet paper wiping up the rear,
filling in for me. But
hey, just so look,
There you go. Subscription complete.
Thank you.
We also promote pandering here. Shameless self-promotion and pandering to our guests. Absolutely 100% above board on this show.
What do they say? Flattery will get you everywhere.
If Schoolie can do it while hosting the show, there's no reason why.
No reason for any of you.
Can't do it right now.
All 21 of you. I could see your eyes.
And here's the problem.
The
problem is my debit card changed, so that's why I didn't auto subscribe, because it didn't have my. And then I couldn't remember my password.
Sounds like excuses to me, but at least
it sounds like white people problems. Personally, like some of the shit I do every day. Like, oh, I forgot my password again. Oh, can I?
Okay.
How many reconfirmation emails do I have in my email today?
My new one's easiest.
I almost got an isolated evil stash laugh, but Casey starts talking towards the end.
My new one's easy. It's stash is number 1. It's my new password.
You better put like a parenthesis or special character at the end.
With a freaking exclamation point, like 80 exclamation points. All
right. We got 4 categories. Let's just go over, since we haven't talked about it yet, the 4 games before our next show, which is quite a few. Yeah. So we got the Jackets tomorrow night. Thursday, the Canucks are in town. Then we go to St. Louis Saturday night, 8:00 game in St. Louis. And then the Kraken Monday, the day game, 4:00 local time, 12:00 in the Kraken land, wherever they play, Seattle. Can't keep track of these teams anymore. So those are the 4 games. So we got 4 categories. Number 1 is going to be which player in these 4 games scores the most points, but you cannot pick one of the first line forwards. If you don't know who the first line forwards are, it's Point, Kucherov, and Hagel. You cannot pick them. We'll let the guests go first, representing the Thunder. Which player is going to score the most points this week?
We just said it. It's Stamkos, right? Like, he doesn't go through stretches like this too often. And I did speak to him today, something I will write as soon as we get off the air here. It'll be posted.
And I get to read it.
Subscribe now. Subscribe now.
Like he says that 500 number is not hanging over him, and I believe him. I have no doubts about that whatsoever. But he
only had 50 shots to get to.
Yeah, right. Like, so the chances have been there.
The team's only been feeding him for 2 weeks now.
I was gonna say Dan Hetty when he hit 498 in the interview afterwards, Hetty plainly said he's at 498. So the players are very aware.
Absolutely. But you want to like I think the thing is I think he wants it over with, and not in a negative kind of way, but he doesn't want us in the media asking the questions. He's like, look, the only time I talk about it is when you guys ask me these questions. So I think it's going to be Steven Stamkos, especially with 4 games. I think once 499 goes in, it's going to lead to more. The floodgate's going to open up a little bit, because he is a streaky goal scorer, and once he gets on a streak, they really tend to come.
Like 14, 15.
We gave you the layup 20. There, but we're going to add a kicker in here to earn the Thunder some extra points. Put a number out there for the points that he will put up.
Just points. I don't have to break it down by goals and assists.
Points.
It's 4 games. Let's go 7.
7 points for Stamkos. Schoolie, who you got?
I got Paul with 5.
Paul with 5. Stash. Stumped.
Well, I mean, that's the top 5 scorers on the team.
Boys,
so
your boy's right out there. Number 7.
That's what happens when you get the first pick in the draft.
Well, I mean, listen, Killer has been showing some signs of life, and I want to go with him, but I think it's Cirelli. I think Cirelli is going to find that life down on that third line. Him and Colton. They need to find something down there. I think we're going to see Paul back on that third line. I do. I think that Cooper in the next few games is going to be like, I don't know.
Hold on.
Once again,
for that.
That's a very good point. I'm not John Cooper. Right. I can only guess at the inner workings of our mastermind. So
Cirelli, how many points?
Yeah, I'm going with Cirelli. Cirelli with 6 points.
6 for Cirelli. I'm gonna give Killer since you left him for me. I'm gonna give him 5. All right. Which player scores the most goals versus the Kraken? Since I'm losing the competition, I will go first.
We can pick anybody on this one.
Pick anyone on this one, and I am not a fool. I will go with Braden Point.
Good job. Does that mean I get to go next?
Go ahead.
I think it's going to be Nick Paul.
Go ahead.
Double. He's going on the third line.
No, I think he's going to be on the second line in that game. I'm just saying.
Kraken's the last one.
What?
Kraken's the 4th game of the week.
I know.
All right, I'm not questioning you. Go with Paul. Go with your heart.
He's going to have. You're asking who's going to have the most goals in that game against Seattle.
Kraken. Yeah.
Right. So I think in that game he's going to be on the second line. How is that terrible logic?
Good, Double E.
I'm going to go way off track here. I'm going to say Mikhail Sergachev.
My kind of answer.
What? You? Oh, he's pandering.
Hold
Fair
on.
enough.
Wait,
Fair
I
enough.
think what you meant to say was.
That's a very good point.
I'm gonna have to delete these sound clips.
Listen, if Thomas Schooley can buy a subscription during the show, I can buy my own soundboard during the show. And this show's gonna devolve real quick going forward because I can get shit here real fast. So
I'm gonna go Hagel.
Hagel, good pick there.
Bag
Only bad
man.
pick with stashes. I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Nick Paul doesn't have a shit ton of multi-point games and multi-goal games since he's been here. I don't know.
You're probably gonna win.
One of the most important 2-goal games last season. I don't know. Nick Paul.
All right.
I don't know.
This one's very simple. We can all have the same answer.
What's
in
the
that
record?
Kraken game,
Oh.
does your boy he was on the block party today.
Who?
His name is Yanni. Does he score a goal against the Bolts? Yes or no?
Yes.
No.
He always does. He will.
No. I'm going yes because we got
He
two.
did. He scored it last time when they were here, right?
He can score here.
Yeah, he did. No,
He assisted.
Oh, he got the assist. That's right. Yeah, so he'll definitely get a goal this time.
All right, so I'll ride with you. I'll go yes. And then this one is an accumulation over the 4 games. How many power play goals will they score? I feel like they didn't score enough this past week, especially to win those last 2 games. So an accumulation of all 4 of those games. How many power play goals will we score? Schoolie,
4.
4.
I got 3.
Oh, it has to be different.
No.
We can mean. I think 5.
I
like 5.
We'll go 3
Oh,
with the insider.
Is that more pandering?
that's the only thing the host does on this show is pander. He does nothing else on that top right square. Circle gets a square.
What do you know? The result.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're not old enough to watch the show.
All right, no. Well, actually, we have a game just for Eric, and it is a game that we've played with a couple other guests. We might have played it with you. It is a lightning round.
Hold on, I have a question real quick. This was earlier in the show from Chris Jones here.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Spit and Chicklets came out, and the article alleging that the commission is basically handing Connor Bedard to Arizona.
How's that true?
If the commissioner was going to hand anybody to Arizona, it was going to be Austin Matthews because he's from there.
Yeah.
Right. Like, no, I don't buy anything into any. I'm not a conspiracy theorist in any way, shape, or form. I don't think the lottery's fixed in any way, shape, or form. I know we can make. I mean, look
are you pandering to the Florida lottery commissioners? They don't watch us. You ain't winning tomorrow. The $1 billion mega money.
Edmonton would not have won the
That's-
number 1 overall pick as many times as they did if it was fixed, right? And
Yeah.
they've actually had to change some of the rules so that it doesn't end up being that way again, right? So no, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't buy those theories one way in any way, shape, or form.
And honestly, I think if they were gonna fix it, I think it would be Anaheim that they want him there. Honestly, I understand what you're talking about, Chris, and like, oh, you want to force viewership for a franchise that's floundering, but Bettman's all in anyways. He doesn't need to force a draft pick to go there to create to say I'm all in on this team, right? Like he's committed anyways. He said they're not going anywhere. I think the team that they're really trying to push, I mean, nauseatingly to me, is the Anaheim Ducks and Trevor Zegras, right? What you want is another star like a Matthews or like a McDavid and Draisaitl or a Matthews and Marner, or you know what I mean? Like I feel like if they really wanted to force Bedard somewhere, it would be SoCal. So, well,
I think he
SoCal.
ends up in Chicago anyway.
He's going to Chicago.
Well, yeah. I mean, they only have what?
They're
8
playing
wins?
bad enough to put themselves in that position.
Yeah.
I can tell you.
Yeah.
They can't lose the
Right?
lottery.
They only have 8 wins. 9.
Yeah.
9.
See, how do you only have
wins?
that? Yeah.
Single-digit wins still. 41 games almost.
Well, is
They're
Anaheim,
almost-
is
they're
Anaheim
almost-
by the way, Mike Douglas, no, Anaheim is not making the playoffs this year. Is is Anaheim even up to like 5 regulation wins this year?
I don't
Like there was a
think so.
point in
That's
time
the
where they
thing.
had 5 wins and 4 of them were in overtime.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, I mean, that's
How
And one of them was against us.
I swear we talked about this earlier in the season, but how have they not fired their coach? And
They have 12. They have 12 wins.
No, yeah.
how many in
But no,
regulation?
Oh yeah. I
Then
don't
they
know.
have four let's say.
It can't be many.
Gonna say road wins. Why does this not say? It doesn't. We need you for those stats, Insider. You should be having those metrics that we don't have as the regular fans.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to look
See,
at
one of us panders, one of us calls you out. All right? That's why I hang around. It's like the love and the abuse.
I want to. Who do you think is
healthy
the
relationship.
first coach fired this season? Because we're actually surprised. there
That's a
hasn't
really good
been
question
some.
on Black Monday. Actually, if it's NFL Black Monday, that's a really good question.
You know what? You know why nobody's been fired yet? Because so many coaches were replaced last year.
Exactly.
That's why. And all those teams that replace their coaches are not. I mean, Chicago just put in Luke Richardson this year. Right? They're not going to fire him.
Yeah.
Dallas Eakins knew he was in for a complete rebuild, so he's not going anywhere. I mean, who? The only team that you consider and say is really below expectations might be St. Louis.
Wait,
Right?
hold on.
You're not letting Craig Berube
You don't think that the Panthers are way below expectation this year?
But they just
they're a new
just
coach.
brought in Paul Maurice.
Right.
He's a new
But-
coach. They're not going to fire Paul Maurice, 3 months into the season. By the way, Anaheim has 4 regulation wins on the year.
4. Yep, I just
Okay, there you
found
go.
it out too. 4 regulation wins.
that's the coach you got to
Yeah.
fire.
That's insane. But how do you fire a guy when you know you're tanking? That's all I'm saying. Like, you can't do that to a guy.
Although
He's
you know
been
you're
tanking
tanking.
there for 3 years.
You do start to wonder about what kind of an NHL coach is Dallas Eakins, right?
Well,
like he was
yeah.
he was the Toronto Marlies coach, and everybody was so high on him. He went to Edmonton, and Edmonton completely bad team. So he goes back to the AHL, does well in San Diego, so they elevate him to Anaheim, and Anaheim's a bad team. Like at some point, retreading coaches who weren't getting success at the NHL level, maybe Dallas Eakins just isn't a very good NHL coach.
What's
well,
that?
and it
What's
has
that
it,
quote?
isn't it-
What's that quote you have on top for me there, Shooter? He's no John Cooper. Clearly, I'm not John Cooper. Yeah. Neither is Dallas Eakins. Neither is Dallas Eakins.
just like Syracuse coach Grow.
Benoit Group.
Yeah. It seems like he's going to be an AHL coach, and that's what I think.
He'll get a job at some point, though. Benoit will get an NHL head job at some point.
I still think he ends up an AHL coach, just like a Nick Saban of college football, and
Because he's had chances to be an assistant coach in the NHL, and he's turned them down because he's waiting to see if an NHL head job comes along. And he hasn't led Syracuse to the promised land yet, but you look at his track record in the second half of seasons, he's really good at getting a young team together to put together good runs in the second half, and they're kind of doing it right now. I know they lost to Hershey last night. They had a 1-2 weekend.
Why'd they sign a goalie to a PTO?
Because
we the hell out of that team too.
There's I don't know if it's Hugo or if it's Lagasse who's hurt, but one of those two is hurt, and then LaFontaine, who they brought up from Orlando, got suspended because he got into a fight. Him and Jamel Smith got suspended today.
I was gonna say it must be Hugo, because I saw Lagasse was on the ice the other night.
Yeah, because was it Subban and
LaFontaine?
They fought that LaFontaine. They got into a fight. Yeah.
Yep. So that's why they signed to go to PTO.
Are you ready for some rapid fire lightning round?
I hope so.
By the way,
Y'all ready for this?
The score of the national championship game, and don't tune out. Don't tune out to go watch that because it's over.
You're not even going to break the score, or you're not allowed to disseminate.
52-7. You can guess who's at the top.
Wow,
Georgia.
Yeah. Not even close. What happened? College football. Expand that playoff.
Dude, all right. That's always been that way. Whatever. All right, go ahead. Move along.
I would rather be watching Ohio State, Michigan after this, but I don't know.
Hey,
what do I know? I don't do the cold college.
Anyways, we don't do that at all.
Questions. These are not just about hockey. Some of them might be. Some of them,
personal questions,
completely out of the realm of anything you wanted to answer tonight.
Whose family did the collection of heirloom silver on the wall come from?
Those are my wife's souvenir spoons.
There you go.
That's I was trying to figure out what they were, and then I finally realized.
I knew that.
The big long
silverware. Absolutely, yes.
It's the big long spoons that you get where the handle has like Tennessee on them and Disney and stuff like that.
I can make you some modern looking spoon holders so they would look like antiques, but like not in the. Never mind. Is your wife with? No, you have headphones on. Good.
So you see that one at the top right there?
Yeah,
that's Prince Edward Island.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. See, that's cool.
Went up to do a story.
Spoons?
No, we went up. When I was at the Trib, we went up and did a story on Brad Richards the year he signed that big contract. Small island player getting the big contract. So we went up there and did a story. So we were, my wife went with me, and we found that spoon holder that was an outline of Prince Edward Island. So that's the key to the collection.
Do you ever take out any of those spoons like after the Lightning win the Stanley Cup and
play them, play a little rhythm,
or have a bowl ice cream like the Stash does?
No, although I should have when they won it in 2020 because I was on my couch.
Make tea.
Everybody else
victory tea, pinkies up, victory tea with the. You should have one for every state. So every time you beat a team in that state, you have victory tea with the spoon representing the team that we just beat.
See, now you just figured out I didn't have one from Colorado.
Oh, well, that's a different kind of tea.
Yeah.
That's my kind of tea.
Hey, shout out to Kelly who showed up because we were her second choice for broadcasting tonight.
Oh, thanks, Kelly.
Only after Georgia scored 60, she tuned in.
No, she was in the chat earlier. I love Kelly. She's fun.
Oh,
We've had a good time.
All right.
More times.
5 questions.
Weird.
5 questions. Here we go. Eric, who was your favorite player growing up for the NHL?
NHL. Well, I'm from Massachusetts originally. And when we moved down to Florida, obviously the Lightning were not even on the radar. So probably Rick Middleton, the old Bruins forward, was a guy that I kind of gravitated to when I was younger. So Rick Middleton.
Very cool. Okay.
Right.
Next one is a pass or shoot, almost like a true or false, but you choose to pass or shoot means you like it. Next year's Winter Classic has been announced that it is Las Vegas versus Seattle. Are you a pass on this one or are you shooting all in?
I'm shooting on this. The Kraken have a very loyal base already. Their uniforms draw eyes. Let's face it; those are some pretty cool looking uniforms. And Vegas is Vegas. With them reaching the Stanley Cup final their first year. The Winter Classic is about ratings. It's about ratings. That's why Pittsburgh and Chicago and Boston and Philadelphia, all these teams are in it every single year. So this game is all about ratings. So from that aspect, actually, I think the league is taking a little bit of a risk here when it comes to those ratings, because it is one team that's only been around, it'll be 2 years, and the other one's only been around since 2017-18, right? So I think they're taking a little bit of a risk on this. So I think this will actually be a little bit of a test for the league in terms of how do the ratings look, and it's a cool ballpark. I don't know if anybody's been to T-Mobile, but I was out there a couple years ago. It's a really cool ballpark. I think that's going to be a really good scene with that the rink on the middle of T-Mobile Field there.
Yeah, I've been there. I actually was there when they demolished the Kingdom. I watched them collapse it, and so I was up there for a while. But yeah, sorry, this is you. Sorry, go ahead.
We'll do this 5 questions with Steph.
I know. We always this is what always happens. We do the rapid fire. Don't act like this has never happened. This happens every time.
And then somebody puts the brakes on and slows it down.
And then one of us has to chime in because it's really relatable to one of us, right? So, anyways, yeah, because
I know you have an opinion on the next one, but we'll ask Eric instead. No. Favorite restaurant in the Tampa Bay area?
Oh, boy, I'm bad on this. Mainly because I don't get out a ton.
The Cigar City Tap House.
I could, but I won't. I don't think it's there anymore. We used to go to the Colonnade a lot in South Tampa. I don't think that's there anymore. That was our favorite place to go, was a Colonnade. I'm being from Massachusetts, the son of a fisherman. I really like seafood, and they had some really good seafood.
That's the one that was right there on Bayshore, right?
Yeah, just off of Bayshore.
Yeah.
It's too bad. Boy, other than that, I don't get out to anything other than what's out here. I live out in the Brandon area. They don't have too many, non-chain restaurants.
They're all chains
out this way, right?
They're basically one big shopping mall in Brandon.
Yeah, so I don't know.
We can go with your shutdown restaurant, which means you get out more than me because I never heard of that place. So.
Well, that just means I'm old because I don't think it's been there for a few years.
Well, also, you don't go to Brandon.
Oh, yeah. Well, Shooter doesn't go to Brandon.
And I don't blame you for that.
I also used to live in Brandon. What do you know?
All right, next one might hit hard at home. I know it hit Blake Wheeler hard because this is based off of Blake Wheeler, who just came back from the ruptured testicle.
Ruptured berries.
Busted a nut.
Would you rather, Eric, suffer a ruptured testicle or eat a Rocky Mountain oyster, which some would say is a ruptured testicle? This is a tough one.
No,
you thought the restaurant.
I don't think it is, because if I eat it, I can throw it back up. If I rupture something, that's some pain I don't want to have to deal with.
Also, this isn't fair because Rocky Mountain oysters are usually deep fried. So that's already at least there's something to look forward to. All right. If you want to ask that question, you got to go Joe Rogan Fear Factor and just a full bull's testicle. No, right? That's the only same misery. At least if it's deep fried, then that's too easy. It's too easy.
All right. You're getting some suggestions for restaurants in the chat, by the way. We got one more for you. What is I know what it's not. What is your favorite Bolts sweater of all time?
Probably the original.
Black home.
The black.
Black used to be the away jersey.
Yeah.
When they started, right?
And that's the one that had Tampa Bay on it, right? The home ones didn't have it on there. I think it's the original because, and not that I don't like the current one. Look, I'm not a big jersey guy to begin with, but the new ones, I know the Leafs comparisons and hey, there's 2 blue teams on the ice and all. I get that, but it's clean, it's crisp. It's it stands out to me in a lot of ways, but I think that original one, because it was the original, they won the first cup in those jerseys. I like that logo. I thought there was a lot to like about it. I like the old patches that were on the shoulder with the originals. Yeah, not the retro storms. The only thing cool about the retros or those storm surge when they first came out was the victory stripes that Phil made sure were under it, right? So everybody could see the three victory stripes, which they don't even have on the reverse retro. If you're gonna bring back the storm surge, you gotta have the victory stripes on it.
And I gotta say that's the number one thing that I'm disappointed about, and I did point that out when we talked about it, is that they didn't have that extra stitching there in the pits.
Remember, were those on the original stuff?
Pits up America.
Yes.
Yeah. The original Storm Surge had the victory stripes. That was the Phil Esposito addition to those jerseys.
Yep.
I heard they ran out of victory stripes in the team store. So
yeah, they ran out.
It ran out of victory stripes on the road.
There was something you mentioned on Twitter. You're constantly tweeting all throughout the game, all through every game day, every day. I have your notifications on automatic, and I don't think there's anybody that tweets more than Erik does. And you have to have some of those on auto sends, because 4:00 in the morning I'll get the tweet from the insider about his story, and I'm thinking, God, I hope he's not awake just finishing this story.
Of course he is.
He's like, look, I am.
Yeah.
I need to take a beat from Erik, honestly. Like, I really need to take a beat from Erik. Like, when I'm at 4:00 in the morning, I just need to start just writing shit. And then, like,
because when
maybe
you're up
somebody will read it.
When you're up at 4, nothing good happens with you, Stash.
No. See, I'm the older, wiser Stash. You don't understand.
That the first time the story link goes out, that's usually when I'm awake. Yeah.
Well, hold on. I think we're on to something. If Stash is inspired at 4 a.m. to write an article, would you entertain putting it on lightninginsider.com?
As long as I had some editorial control over
it. Absolutely.
I want to see what this man thinks about late at night.
Listen, I'm an eloquent writer, but even the best writers need editors. Come on.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? I found that out because I'm a terrible self-editor. I cannot edit my own work to save my life.
I'm verbose, and I love very long sentences.
I appreciate my copy editors more and more every time I write something nowadays, because there's my eyes are the only eyes on it except for the people who read it. And I used to have a subscriber who would read it and say, "Hey, this needs to change," and I would go back and change it. She must not subscribe anymore because I don't get those emails.
One of the things I learned from an early age of writing is when you're proofreading yourself is to read it backwards. I don't know if you ever got that tip, but go to the end of whatever you wrote and read it from the last word and read it backwards, because then it doesn't flow as well, and then your brain thinks about it more intricately, and then things that are like run on, oh, that's way too long, or that's bigger than I wanted it to be, are more impactful than if you were reading it top to bottom, because you've already written it and it seems fluid to you. You know what I mean? And so you're not as analytical. If you're reading it backwards, then you're much more analytical of what you've written, and then you're going to look at it more line by line than paragraph by paragraph.
I will try that tonight.
So something
it won't be at 4 a.m. I can promise you that.
No,
not tonight.
Something I had seen on there was you were talking about the Lightning possibly getting the Stadium Series. Do you see that happening?
I was just going to say, I'm sorry. I was going to say one more thing, but like the whole thing about the Winter Classic, I do think they're able to take a chance because they have added the Stadium Series games, and there's more than just one outdoor game where they can appease more fans. So they have that one that's like the showcase, but there's still a couple of other outdoor games that lead up to it. So it's not as much of a gamble as maybe it would be if it was only the single outdoor game.
I do think they're going to get an outdoor game. I don't think it's going to be a Winter Classic, because you can't trust the weather on January 1st or 2nd. Plus, you have the bowl game, right? Former Outback Bowl, now the ReliaQuest Bowl. Yeah. So you can't. It'd be hard to have the stadium for that. Plus, what was it on New Year's Day this year? Wasn't it like 81 degrees on New Year's Day? Like we were 40 degrees on Christmas Day, and a week later it's 80 degrees. So you can't trust the weather. I've actually had this conversation back when I was doing Lightning Lunch for the team on Lightning Power Play. I had Paul Delgado on.
We talked about this. Yeah, we talked about that article. Actually, one of the first times you came on our show, we talked about that interview you had in the article you wrote.
Yeah. So, I mean, Paul said it can be done. You would just have to do it late January, early February. That is the most reliable times of the year to where the temperatures could be at a situation to where it'd be more feasible. Obviously, it's not going to be an afternoon game, right?
No,
and
it'd be a nighttime game.
And I think you would have to build in some leeway where, okay, if you can't do it on a Saturday, maybe it has to be done on a Wednesday because that's when the weather would be a little bit better. So I think you have to build in some leeway if you're going to do it here.
Be like Winter Classic week or something.
Yeah, something like that.
And you have like maybe you could even have like we have like exhibitions of other teams, or like I don't know, like you could have.
Well, they
like,
had to change the times. They had to change the times a couple of years ago when they did it at the Air Force Stadium. Yeah.
Well, the Lake Tahoe game, remember, because the sun was too much, they had to push back even after they had started the game. I think it's feasible. Look, Jeff Vinnick doesn't take no for an answer, as we know. I mean, he just doesn't take no. And he pestered Gary Bettman for an all-star game. He got an all-star game. I know he's pestering for an outdoor game. He's going to get it at some point. There's just a lot of work that has to be done to try and pull it off. And, one thing everybody brings up, well, hey, LA did it. The climate's different in LA, right? There's no humidity.
It's way more dry.
Because it's not necessarily the sun, although the sun is an enemy of the ice. It's the humidity. The humidity is the biggest thing. And I mean, look, if we could have had the outdoor game on Christmas Eve this year, it would have been great. It would have worked out just perfectly.
I still believe that Shooter's onto something with some kind of a glass dome. We actually play real life bubble hockey in Tampa Bay. That's what I think.
As long as it doesn't work like Buzz Lightyear's mask. Right.
or the Simpsons movie. Either one.
Thank you for bringing the Simpsons into it.
They can oh gosh,
Simpsons did it.
He loves his Simpsons tweets. I mean, they could play at Tropicana Field with the dome on there.
Not the same though.
Yeah,
really.
The novelty is the outdoor
point, right? The point, because I've thought about that multiple times, but absolutely, the novelty is the fact that you're playing hockey outside because that's the way it was played however many hundred years ago in Canada, because that literally had nothing else to do and no other way to play a sport except for on ice. And you can't play things on ice unless you have some kind of a blade to stand on ice. Like
you want to talk about ratings? People would view just to see if it'd be a train wreck.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
They're putting on an outdoor game in Florida. I got to look at this.
Listen, you go on social media, who has the biggest amount of posts about them out of all 50 states? It's Florida, period. Nobody gets more heat on social media than Florida. So
a lot of us deserved.
It's because of train wrecks. Well, because of train wrecks. Absolutely.
Nobody else has their own man.
It's going hockey in Florida. Because they've been wanting it to be a train wreck forever, and it hasn't been, thanks to us, right? So here it is. Finally, the train wreck we've been waiting for. Outdoor hockey of Florida. Like, you're not wrong. There's ratings alone, and the train wreck factor alone brings in ratings.
And that's where the risk comes from the league, right? Because as they've been able to pull off all these outdoor games since 2008, right? So we're 15 years into the outdoor games. The first time it doesn't work, everybody says, see, it doesn't work, right? So there's the risk factor for the league.
And that's one of Bettman's babies too, That's for all the things that people bemoan about him as a commissioner, I don't think he gets enough credit. I really don't. He's done his job as commissioner. He's held this league together, multiple lockouts. We keep seeing growth. We've seen every single team grow in value this year. The Lightning doubled in value in their valuation this year from $500 million to over $1 billion. Like the 16%, even the Arizona grew in value in 16%. So, the guy's doing his job. And you're right that the outdoor games have really kind of been his signature thing that got him out of that stigma of not really doing things that are traditional, right?
And having as many as 3 per year, right? Because and that's the Heritage Classic games. They're not every year, but
exact. But right, and I think that you could, you don't want to oversaturate it, but at the same time, there is room to maybe throw a couple more throughout the mid part of the season, because like we've talked about it, for us fans, we're waiting for April, right?
Yeah.
This starts the grind. We talked about it a couple of shows ago here. We're getting into the grind of the season for us where, okay, the newness is worn off, and now we're just sitting here basically putting marks on the wall, waiting for that slash mark, for every 5 until we finally get to April and meaningful hockey again for our fan base. So throwing a few extra more novelty games in the heart of the season can never really be a bad thing for the league and their branding and their marketing, I think.
They have to find ways to get out of being a regional sport. In a lot of ways, it's still a regional sport, right? You start to compare. I mean, what was the whatever has been thrown around the last couple of days, the top 20 rated shows are on television, and 18 of them have been NFL games.
Yeah.
Right. So, you're never going to get to that level, but you have to break out and get to a situation to where you're not just a regional sport, that people will tune into a game no matter who it is. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
And Lightning fans, I mean, fortunately and unfortunately, we gained a lot of fans during the Stanley Cup years.
Thank you for just using the 1 F and not the 2 Fs for the fans.
So they don't know what it's like not to win.
Right.
And then also when they announced the Seattle Kraken versus Las Vegas, you saw Twitter blowing up that Tampa doesn't get the respect. Okay, I'm tired of that. We got the Global Series game. People forget that we've had that. We've had the outdoor game. Yeah.
Robert shoots.
Yeah.
Shooter.
It's not 2 teams that I would have thought would deserve it, if people want to say the deserving, because they haven't been around. And like you said, it's a ratings grabber. I thought you would have to put one of the big teams in there. Both teams travel well. We see it when they come here to Tampa. Even Kraken only 2 years in, there's still plenty of Kraken fans, but a lot of them are
great.
They're Yanni fans.
Seattle is a great sports market.
No,
like you think
absolutely.
of the support, the Seahawks, the Sounders, that they're still clamoring to get the Sonics back, right?
Yeah.
It's just a great sports market.
Yeah.
It sucks to live there, but their sports fans are amazing.
And Vegas, I mean, we were there strong the first year that Tampa played there, and then I've been back since, and they love their team there. And when they come here, there's lots of Knight fans here also. So I can see where the intrigue is there, the 2 newest teams facing each other. But I really thought you would need to put a Vegas versus, like a New York or
the Rangers.
Hey, listen, I will say this. What I love about it is that it pisses off all the original 6 team fans. And I'm here for that. I'm always here for that. Because, the Winter Classic, it's going to be 2 06 teams. Oh, so every year we only get 6 teams to choose from this matchup? No. And I think that's what I like about it the most. Do I think they deserve it? Probably not. But do I like the fact that the NHL is saying, hey, we don't care what year you are as a franchise. If you have a fan base and you have a market and you have something that we believe can grow our brand nationally, not regionally, we're going to give you the exposure. And you know what? I think it doubles down off of last year's Stadium Series with us in Nashville. Did we get the Winter Classic? No. But did we have a premier primetime outdoor game against another non-traditional market team? Yes, we did. And did we all show up from both sides and make it probably the best game of the season last year? Yes, we did. So,
and I heard from several
people were bitching about that. A lot of people were bitching last year that the Predators and the Lightning, two teams from the South got an outdoor game. Well, guess what? It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. So, no, do they deserve it, quote unquote? No. But do the original 6 teams deserve it offhand? No, they don't either. Right. So,
and I'm sure, Eric, you heard this too, because I heard it from several people inside the organization that they were complimented by the NHL about Tampa fans traveling, about even in Sweden, they were surprised by how many Lightning fans went to Sweden, how many Lightning fans went to Nashville for the outdoor game last year. And even Nashville people were surprised on how much Tampa fans traveled. And the same thing, I didn't get the chance to go to Sweden, but several of my friends did. And they were hearing the same thing there from Buffalo fans that, you know, they couldn't believe how many Lightning fans there was, that there's probably 3-1 on Lightning fans. I think
there's
in
a lot
Nashville,
of disposable income in this fan base. There's a
Nashville
lot of
was like
income.
15-1. It seemed like, especially if you walk down Broadway.
On Broadway, it was about 150-1.
Yeah, everybody was just yelling "Go Bolts" all down Broadway. So you know, and I'm sure you heard that too. So I think that's where a lot of fans were also expecting some of these games, because you know we travel well, and Tampa fans always do, and you're seeing that now even on away games. Back in the day, you didn't have but 1 or 2 maybe Lightning fans in the opposing arena, and now you're actually hearing some clapping and some chanting going on at all 31 other arenas.
Yeah, look, the fan base has obviously grown. I said this many times. In 2004, the fan base was born. You know, 2020, it's matured. Right?
It's the second generation.
Yeah, exactly. Because you know, like
second generation.
Even my son was only 5 years old when they won that first cup, right? And obviously, I was involved in it. I was around it a lot. We saw it was in the house a lot because of what I did, you know, for my job. So that made an impression on him. And by 2011, when they got back to the Eastern Conference Finals, he's like leading parades around our neighborhood. You know, with the theme song. What was it? All In was the theme that year. He's got that blaring out the back of a neighbor's truck that they were riding around the neighborhood with lightning flags and everything. So, you know, that's what I say, that 04 championship fan base was born. And now you're seeing, you know, kids who were 5, 9, 10 years old at that time are now adults, you know, who are still attached to this franchise, have a deep
and having
love
kids
and
of their own
for this franchise.
Like
it's like, you know, I've had this conversation with Chief a lot, right? The Flyers were only 5 years into their existence when they won their first cup. And it made an impression. And now Philly is looked at as one of the best markets for hockey in the league. It took a while to get there, but because that first cup so early into their existence created that fan base and created that generational fan base. And that's just what we're getting at with the Lightning now. So yeah, absolutely. The showing up in Nashville made an impression on the league. And I think that's why Jeff Vinik is going to get his outdoor game at some point. It's going to happen.
Well, and we're not going to get back-to-back honors, right? We're not an original 6 team. We're not a mass market team yet, but we are showing we're the how many now? 315, 320 now consecutive sellouts, right? Longest by far in the league. We show out when we travel, so we've got to share it a little bit. I mean, Florida's getting their Panthers are getting their All-Star game, and you know it's cool that we're helping them out, I believe, because we're good. They're getting benefits for that. But we're just going to see more and more opportunities for the NHL to have a footprint here in Tampa Bay the longer we go, because of our fan base and our ownership in the last 10 to 12 years with Jeffy Vinik coming in.
But I think it was you that tweeted out, Eric, that the sellouts don't show up in the ratings, and national ratings, Tampa doesn't do that great on national TV. And that's some of the numbers that the NHL looks at, because when Bally puts out theirs, they say it's huge market share for the Lightning. The Lightning do one of the highest numbers in any of their Bally markets. But then when we go to the national games, it's not. But do you think that's because a lot of those national games are here at home and you have 19,000 in the arena? Or is people just cable and not getting the cable?
I don't think we get great matchups in those games. I got to go take a break. If we're going to keep going, I'm fine, but I got to take a break. I'm just going to put my 2 cents. I think we don't have great matchups and great time slots in those TNT games and those natural games. I don't think we have the best matchups all the time.
I don't think the league does a good enough job of marketing their stars. Think about the NBA And when they kind of took off is when they started marketing personalities around the league. So now you can get teams in Oklahoma City, right? Memphis, markets that they're not big markets, but because you can promote it on a national scheme or on a national scale, you get that. I've always said Marty St. Louis in his heyday should have been at the top of the league's marketing. Like, he should have been pushed out there because of the underdog story, undrafted, cut from his first team, like bought out from his first contract. And he goes on to have an MVP, season and eventually a Hall of Fame career. And yet they didn't. And some of it is the culture, right? Like, think about in 2008, the whole Scene Stamkos marketing campaign, right? When they had the first overall pick.
Blew up huge.
Right. That was under Oren Koulis, right? Hollywood mind, knows how to promote, that kind of stuff. That was under his leadership and under his guidance. Had the previous owners been in charge, they were not going to allow that to happen, right? The marketing company came up with that. And certainly if John Tortorella was still the head coach, that was not going to happen. He would not have allowed that to happen because it's never promoting the individual over the team. And that's just kind of the culture of hockey. We in a national scope, the NHL, who do they promote? It's always the same guys, right? It's always Sidney Crosby. It's always Alex Ovechkin. Like, you don't even hear a lot about Connor McDavid. You should probably hear more about Connor McDavid because of the electrifying player he is. But because of where he plays, you don't maybe see it as much. If he were in New York, if in some place like that, he would get pushed more by the league. But because he plays in the Canadian market, and that's the other thing about the NHL. They're unique in that they're a two-country professional league, right? I know the NBA has the Raptors and the Blue Jays or an MLB, but there's one franchise. There's 7 Canadian franchises, right? So you're having and ratings can get kind of skewed that way too, because if you have a Stanley Cup final between a Tampa Bay and a Calgary, the ratings are split, right? Yeah. Because all of Canada's watching, so they're getting monster ratings. And here you've got a small market Tampa team, who's not going to especially at that point in time, is not going to translate and transcend into a national scene. Part of that is because the league, I don't think, does a good enough job of promoting itself. I've said it a million times. The league thrives sometimes despite those who run it. And so I think that's where some of that comes from. They don't do, think about the stars that are on this team. You've got, how many Hall of Famers are on this team right now? Stanley, 5, Hedman, Vasilevsky, Kucherov, maybe Point. If we want to throw Corey Perry in there, that's 6 Hall of Famers on this roster right now. The league doesn't talk about it enough.
Stamkos.
He made three straight Stanley Cup finals.
Listen. We'll talk about it right now, and I'm going to get on it now because we're going. This is one of our longest shows. You're welcome. Good job, Shooter. Nice short show. Going on 2 hours here. I'll get on it.
I haven't talked in the last 55 minutes.
Well, no, because you never talk on this show. That's the problem. You don't rein us. Anyway,
let's go on with what you're saying, Tosh.
Steven Stamkos is on the precipice of 500 goals. All we hear about is Ovechkin. That's all we hear about. I get it. Ovechkin got 800. Okay, is he going to get Gretzky this year? Nope, he's not. But is Stamkos going to be like? That's the guy. If he was in Toronto, we would be hearing about him like McDavid every single day. More than we hear about Matthews, for sure. We would hear about Stamkos more if he was in Toronto or New York, or right? Like, it's ridiculous that just because we're here in Florida, that these superstar level players, like Kucherov's probably the best right wing in the league.
No, it's not probably. He is.
Right. And there's another right winger that's really good that people talk about a lot. And he's better than that. You know what I'm saying? Like that. And we don't even, he's an all-star? Well, where's Point? Where's Stamkos? Where's Hedman?
Where
are all these guys, right? Vasi.
And selfishly though, I don't want Vasi in the All-Star game.
No,
well,
I want him resting. But that's just a selfish part of me is wanting him to rest, but I digress.
Moose is why I love the Moose even more. People don't give the Moose enough credit. When the Moose is loose, that's good because we're saving Vasi's juice.
I added
record that one, nice. Shooter.
So I got one more question for you. Why hasn't Perfect signed a deal with Publix yet.
You know, I've asked myself that question a
That's 'cause
lot,
Publix
and not
sucks.
just in this case, but like, why don't some of these guys have more local endorsement
Local
deals?
spot. It's because
Right?
I'm not a
Ben
sports
Bishop and
manager.
Tyler
That's
Johnson
why.
are about the only ones, right?
Well,
that
see,
had them
I
recently.
need to be a
used
local
to-
sports manager.
But the problem is that they all have these, like, all the Russians are, Gold Star, and he signs them to just the one or upper decker, whatever it is, Jag or whatever. He signs them to for their signatures and for them being able to do autographs. So they don't really get to go out and visit. But I remember Stamkos didn't have. It wasn't here, but he had an ad up in Toronto with a watch.
Audio is getting really bad.
Oh,
No.
can you hear me now? Am I?
No, it's
It's
been
just scratchy,
getting
that's all.
progressively worse throughout this episode for some reason. Usually it's really good.
But Stammer had an endorsement in Toronto, but not here for a watch. But it never showed here. It only showed in Toronto.
How do we not have a Lightning endorsed car dealership? We have 5,000 car dealerships in Tampa. We don't have a
Well, there was
single
one, right? Ben
endorsed.
Bishop had one.
Yeah,
Right.
it was Dimmitt.
Right.
Dimmitt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Tyler had one too. Johnny had the one with them as well.
Yeah, with hot tubs. With,
And
with
the only
the
other
auto
one I
top.
remember is Paul Eisbart. Like Paul Eisbart had a 7-Eleven spot locally, like years ago. Elderford, there it is. Stephanie. had it.
Yeah.
It was Crown.
Bishop and Eldford, yeah. Crown.
Yeah. Well, see but that's a team.
No,
right?
that's different.
That's the team one, right? Because we hear Paul Porter say it every day. This is the Crown on
Oh, yeah.
last minute.
Yeah,
game.
Crown, yeah.
You hear Dave Michigan say it too.
Yeah.
Triple A for Tyler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's even.
see, I don't know. I don't know why
It's
there's
national.
not more. But come to think of it, like how many
tell you
Bucks
what.
players have local endorsement
See,
deals?
and right, exactly, and
A couple of the Rays
this
guys.
is why we still suffer as an overall market. If we want to get away from this, I should just get deep dive in overall sports talk here, going into hour number 2. This is why I think we still suffer as a sports market nationally, because we don't have those type of local sponsors. We don't have that type of local like fervor for our athletes. And yet, I think that's what makes our athletes love to play here, right? They don't have that pressure. They don't have that overexposure. They don't have, I've got to go do this commercial, and then this person wants me and that person wants me. No, when they're home, they're going to the rink, they're playing hockey, and then they're going back home and hanging out with their family, or they're doing, so it's kind of like, we wish that they did a little bit more to put us more on the map as like a sports town. But we also love the accessibility and how they love that it's just, it's just a regular town that they can live in, and they're not under a microscope like a Toronto or a New York or a Calgary.
But are players even still doing that? Are they doing like Panarin, Breadman, local?
Who's doing isotoners? Who's doing the isotoner gloves?
Dan Marino.
Who's the Marino?
But I mean, we don't even have
I don't know if
the
they're
players' charities here. I mean, Hetty just did that one for the wine, but had anybody heard about that before? It's more actually for the SPCA than for anything else. But, players, there's not even a players' charity for anybody on this team, where before we had, Vinny had the biggest charity here in Tampa for the longest time.
Yeah, Richie's Rascals, Cali.
Yeah.
Cali had a big one.
Well, and maybe part of that is Mr. Vinnick just saying, "Hey guys, I got it. You focus on hockey, and if you want to go do events and stuff, we'll help organize that through the franchise. But you don't have to worry about it. You just come do your job. You go home and go be a family man or whatever, and then I'll handle."
In that hometown
charitable
show,
donations. Who's done more, right? Who's done more than Jeffrey Vinnick in all of sports?
Well, that
North
hometown
American
show
sport,
for Nick Paul, when they interviewed Nick Paul, apparently he had one back in Ottawa, and he said he's trying to put one together here in Tampa. And I really hope that happens, because for the one time we had the Mac and Miller
Well, let's get our nonprofit department on that and reach out to Nick Paul and see if we could be the ones to make that happen for him.
If he wants to do it, it'll get done.
Yeah.
The team will help him out on it for sure.
And then Miller, got traded. So then it went to Mac and Killer charity, the Can Jam. But that only happened one season because then COVID hit.
Yeah.
But they haven't brought it back. Well, of course, Mac's gone now. But it was supposed to be a different player from every team was doing that Can Jam that year, and then it totally has not gone anywhere. So it's just weird we don't have that here in Tampa anymore.
Well, and you nailed it too. Part of it might be coming out of COVID too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's still a whole new thing, and they had to take basically 3 entire years off from doing any kind of real PR marketing outside of their little bubble. So maybe we just give them an extra year or two to get back to it.
And with the endorsements, they're still, we just saw Hedman and Stamkos on that national.
That's true. That amazing commercial.
So why the hell are they going to do like a Ford commercial in Tampa?
Which is funny though, because that I did just see a video the other day of Hedman and his oldest kid out on the ice together. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, you once again, you can't believe marketing or Hollywood. I hate how fake Hollywood is.
Yeah, so social media, by the way. So
listen.
All right, let's wrap it up because
this is going to be our longest show of all time.
Articles to write.
Right.
I feel like there's like a little rat outside of Thomas Schooley's home, just chewing away,
chewing on the wire,
and eventually he's just going to like disappear on us.
Maybe somebody should actually give him a real microphone.
Yes, you should.
Shooter.
Eric, this was promised to me 2 birthdays ago. And Shooter has one sitting at his house for me.
But it sounds like he kicked the rat away because it's not breaking up anymore.
Yeah, what do you know? Hey,
someone took care of the rat.
I gotta have my backup.
He got Vinny and Mickey to come take care of the rat. What do you know?
All right, lightninginsider.com. Go support Eric. You can get $10 off your first year if you go subscribe right now using the code Thunder. So go check that out. Go get your Monkey Colt coffee. We've got a code for 10% off there. Goals 10. That is good until midnight. monkeycoltcoffee.com. And don't forget, we will be live next Monday after the Lightning take on the Kraken for that 4 p.m. start time. So usually right around 7 o'clock. We'll get in and out before the Buccaneers playoff game next week. So hopefully we will see you guys then. Any final words, Eric?
I love these conversations. I love being able to come on with you guys. We have a lot of fun. I love the interaction. I love being able to do this. I just have a blast. So you say it's the longest show, but I don't care. It's that's just how good the conversation is when you go this long.
It makes me blush.
Yes, thank you so much for jumping on. We'll get you on again, maybe after the trade deadline, so you don't have to answer any trade deadline questions. But until then, enjoy your 4 games of Lightning hockey. Don't worry, they're going to snap that losing streak tomorrow back at home. Until then, we'll see you. This has been We the Thunder. Don't forget to be the Thunder.
That's it.